We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the CashFlowPro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of CashFlowPro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Tommy Stoner of the Special Operators Transition Foundation. That's a mouthful. Tommy, how are you today, sir?
Doing great, Casey. How you doing this morning?
Oh, man. I'll tell you, I coach my stepson's baseball team. And so last night I was hitting the kids' ground balls with the bat like this, right? I'm doing exactly what I coached them not to do, and that's chop at the ball. But I was chopping at the ball, trying to hit it to the pitcher so the pitcher could move and make the play, right? Well, in a full-on swing to chop the ball down, I came through, missed the ball, and hit myself right on the knee. And so I'm currently, it's worse than a man cold right now around here. So
when you started that story, I had a feeling that's where it was going.
Yeah, and then I'm like, all right, so you're not like young, and you can be old and dumb, but old and dumb hurts. Old and dumb hurts longer, right? Young and dumb, at least you heal quick. But anyway, I don't know, man. So here we are. Yeah, we're ready to shoot podcasts. Just if anybody has an extra knee they could mail my way, just let's see, I'll give you my address at the end of the show. So go ahead, Tommy. Tell us a little bit about what you all do, and let's get a little bit of history about you and who you are, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about the organization. I'll tell you how I became affiliated with it and how I got in the role that I'm currently in right now. But the Special Operators Transition Foundation, we're a 501c3 nonprofit that helps special operations veterans, the operators. So think Army Special Forces Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Marine Corps Raiders, the 160th Special Operation Aviation Regiment, the Air Force Special Operations, both the air crews and their ground teams from the combat control teams out there, Special Tactics Squadrons, and even the intelligence side of the house. So Central Intelligence Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, their case officers. We run a transition program to help them transition out of their military or service to the government to their next future career. So how do they pivot from what they are doing to something they can be passionate about and purposeful and kind of meets their needs overall. So we've been doing this program. We became incorporated in 2013, and 2014 is when we really started the first folks coming through the program. And we started out with 4 that first year, and then the second year we were up to 7, and then 15, and it's continued to basically double until about a year and a half ago, and then it tripled, and it's kind of hit that exponential growth curve as people see the value of using transition programs like ours. So we work with them 12 to 18 months before they leave service. So this is before they get out. We start the process of preparing them, and we put them through a process of executive coaching to really help them understand themselves and maybe look at themselves in a very different way. Because a lot of times they wear a uniform and there's kind of, hey, I'm a Navy SEAL or a Special Forces guy. Here's who I am. And if you've been in the military, everybody's different, but there's kind of this professional paradigm that you represent. So we help kind of peel that away a little bit, get to the core of who they are, what motivates them, what their skills and attributes and experience are, and then start the process of helping them to translate that into, here's my value proposition to a potential hiring partner out there. And then we use our pretty expansive network of contacts to start to introduce them to different business leaders in different areas so they can explore it. So for example, your space, somebody is interested in this, we'd pick up the phone, call you and say, hey, can you have a conversation first to really educate them and guide them, see if this is a good fit for them. And ultimately we help shepherd that into a hiring network. Sure. How I got affiliated with this program is I retired after 29 years in the military. the vast majority of that in the special operations community. So in 2015, I came to the program, retired in 2016, and this organization helped me transition out of the military and actually work at a Fortune 500 company in kind of the technical side of the house and data and analytics. And I had really no background in technology and certainly not in a financial institution, but they helped me again identify what skills, attributes, and experience I had, helped me connect to senior leaders in the organization who were able to have a discussion with me, see that value, and then bring me into the organization and kind of help shepherd me through the process.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to come here in 2020, right before the pandemic, to lead the organization. A good friend of mine, Rob Carilla, had a capital investment company. It was starting to take off, and it was a passion of his, much like a lot of folks that listen to this podcast, kind of go out there and run their own thing. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to step away from this full time." He's still associated with the organization, and the board thought I was a good fit to come in here, and particularly as a graduate of the program to really help continue our mission there.
Sure. Now, and I also, one thing I think that as just kind of an outsider looking in, when we start talking about the ex-military, especially the ex-special forces guys, it's something that we hear a lot about on the news is taking care of the veterans. And I think a lot of people tend to, again, from the outside looking in, say taking care of the veterans to me means obviously something completely different than probably it means to you. Taking care of the veterans to me is making sure they have the first and foremost mental health care that is, and then number two, physical and so on and so forth. And I think a lot of times we attribute that to like basic life needs instead of like how these guys go from, because there's not, in the consumer world, there's not a huge demand for like throwing hand grenades and being the best AK-47 shooter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and so I really love this program and the fact that you're almost repurposing what they've known, because again, these are guys that are at the very top of their profession, right? When you talk about special forces, they're almost like they're the NFL players in my opinion, the NFL players of the Marines, or of the armed forces rather. And so correct me if I'm wrong in any of that. I mean, is that kind of, and then you all are able to repurpose some of, or say, hey, let's take that passion, that systematic way of living, because I've been around enough military guys to know that, like, I mean, whenever we were in the real estate sales business and we go show houses, a lot of military around here, and you could always tell, like, husband's stuff's nice, neat, folded, stacked up on the bed, especially higher end homes, because those guys were usually the special forces. And anyway, correct me if I'm wrong in any of that, but it seems to me like that's kind of the direction of the organization is almost repurposing what all they've known.
Yeah, there's what's interesting. There's a really interesting statistic in the Department of Labor. They put it out in conjunction with the VA out there about how many veterans are out in the workforce, and we're hovering somewhere around 8%, and that's across blue collar, white collar, everything. Now think about that. That means 92%, 8% of the workforce, right? Of 8% of Americans out there. I mean, the number of people that actually are volunteering these days is about 1%, right? So it's pretty low. But taking everything into account, right? What's out there, and it's 8%. So that's 8% of the workforce.
The other percentage of that, the people that just straight up retire and just say, "Hey, I'm going to go like enjoy my kids and live life."
Well, it's just not many people are joining the military, so that's just a reflection of how many are out there, and overall,
I follow
the percentage of folks joining the military is pretty low to the population. So we're going to see that number go down. Historically, before the Iraq and Afghanistan, it was closer to low 6%. It bumped up a little bit because we surged, recruiting across the board. So we have more veterans than we historically have, but that number is starting to trend down again, and it'll probably stabilize around that 6%. So basically 92 to 94% of the people you're working with in the workforce haven't served in the military. And as you become more senior, it's actually smaller. It's less than 1% of senior leaders across all the Fortune 500 companies served in the military. So what you have is a really gap of understanding of what it means, what veterans issues really are. Fundamentally, our organization, and particularly myself, think it's not mental health like everybody lists out. I think mental health is a symptom of a lot of things going on. And we'll talk that here in a second. The biggest thing is, in general, the military, whether you like the military and stayed in or not, it gave you a sense of purpose and it gave you a sense of team, right? That's why you see driving around, you see people that did 3 years in the Marine Corps, 4 years in the Marine Corps, and 30 years later, they still have the Marine Corps emblem on the back of their pickup truck or their car, right? It's because they're pretty prideful and purposeful about it. Think about this. How many of your teammates are driving around 30 years later with your organization, right? Your company's logo on the back of their car.
Yeah. And that's even the same for like, when you remember when we were ride or die for my fraternity in college, I mean, and then like 4 years after, you graduate college, then you go back and visit with the people you went to school with over 4 years. And then eventually you're like, that was, but you're right. I mean, you've got even people that have been out for 40 years or whatever, that are just still just as prideful today as they were the day they graduated basic or whatever, it's just, it's
absolutely,
it's such an interesting, I don't want to say lifestyle, but like I've obviously, like I said, I've been around a lot of these guys, and the whole Fort Campbell field that's just in our general vicinity, general area is, I don't know, man. It's like an elite club, because we have the Night Stalkers, which is I guess that, and I've never really sat down and studied the divisions or whatever, but it's a division of Special Forces. Am I correct?
They're the helicopter aviation unit, so that they fly all the specialized helicopters. So they're a key component. I mean, all these missions you hear about, whether it's Osama bin Laden raid or others, they're the ones flying the helicopters to get these elite commando operators on target, and then just as importantly, if not more, off that target.
And the other thing about kind of coupling this into the real estate syndication space or the real estate investment space is a lot of them make big money, right? I mean, they make, especially the Night Stalkers, the helicopter pilots.
Not really, believe it or not, they don't. They're that's what's interesting. So there's an interesting dynamic. So you take a Special Forces operator, he's not making any more than somebody in the 82nd, other than maybe demolitions pay, which the general person, but that's $150 a month or thereabouts. So you're basically doing more, higher expectations, and you're not making any more money. Now there are retention.
Where did a lot of these guys hit their money at? I mean, because again, okay, let me back up. So a lot of money to me in this area, in our general economic climate, is like $150,000 a year. And maybe that's different elsewhere. I don't know if the cost of living increases in different states or whatever, but do they get the big deployment bonuses and stuff? Is that where a lot of them gathered, like it just in the last, say, 10 years, 15 years, their wealth?
Are you talking about while they're on active duty?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the military, you can go up and you can figure out what any one of these folks is getting paid, right? You can literally, it's a government pay schedule. It's how long have you been in, what's your rank, what's your zip code you're living at, what are your specialties? So, they're getting flight pay, and that's kind of it, right? So where do they get their wealth? Well, a lot of them are probably saving it, particularly when you're deploying. I know while I was deploying, didn't have a lot of side spending, so a lot of that was going into savings and investments out there. But I think the military pays in general pretty well when you compare it to the civilian side of the house overall. And I think there's a fallacy that the military doesn't pay well in things, and it really does in the scheme of things. Now, in the civilian side of the house, you're not getting on an airplane and going away for 12 to 15 months and, not seeing your family. And, by the way, you may not come back. That's not very common.
Yeah, that's the caveat. No, 100%.
But kind of getting back to where we were talking about that kind of purposeful and prideful piece, I think the biggest struggle that a lot of veterans have, and particularly within our special operations community, is they're very purposeful about what they're doing, both for this nation and for their organizations they join. And then they're part. You talked about the athletes. They really are scholar athletes. If you look at the special operations community, they have higher scores coming in. Right now, even in our listed population that's in our program, I mean, we're about 90% have bachelor's degrees, and that's even including the enlisted. And they either had it before they came in, or they got it while they're serving in some way, shape, or form. And about 70% have master's degrees. It's just a different population group that goes in the special operations community. So they're getting unplugged from this very purposeful, passionate, high-performing team that they probably served with for years, if not decades in a lot of instances. And then they're going out into this unknown in the civilian world, and they don't know how they fit. And you hit it, hey, we don't have a lot of use for people who throw grenades here. Well, I can tell you in the military, let's take one of those special operations helicopter pilots you talked about, who are the absolute best in the world. They've got mission planning, leadership management, logistics. I mean, the leaders are accountable for all that. So very multifunctional, working across human performance, building the right team. So take the helicopter piece out of it, flying the helicopter. They're already doing that just to sustain their organization. And they go through different roles there, organizational training, all of that. So they've got all these other skills outside of throwing hand grenades, flying helicopters, going after bad guys and taking them down. The intense complexity to make all that stuff happen. That's the same thing that business does every day, right? Like, hey, how are you getting the human resources and the right people and developing those folks? Sure. What are the processes you have in place to do things? How are you managing resources, whether it's logistical or financial, and prioritizing and executing those? And that's what we do really in that first phase, is get them to understand that they do have skills outside of these warfighting skills, those supporting actions to give them that are absolutely 100% applicable to going out there in the civilian world and doing great things for the organization. Probably the most important thing for them is, what do I like doing day to day functionally, right? Do I like kind of being in the chaos? Do I like kind of building new things, forward looking? Am I the guy that loves to go in and score the deal, right? I get this a lot. They're like, when have military guys done sales? Well, every time you have to try to go do a mission in country, you got to sell that mission, right? To the host nation, the embassy, all your partners there.
Man, that's crazy. You just don't, that's the stuff you don't think about. That's that right there almost humanizes the whole thing, because like a lot of us see this as, like, from the outside looking in, as like, man, that guy's a helicopter pilot. He doesn't have a, whatever. It doesn't have a clue how to do whatever common daily tasks, something else, whatever. But that humanizes it when you're like, hey man, they got to get this brass on the phone, and then this, they've got to sell it up the line, and then up the line has to turn around and sell it to the host nation. That's like, hey, will you come in there and let us do this?
And usually it's not really up the line.
That's really funny.
Yeah, it's really not up the line. It's usually actually at the pointy end of the spear, right?
All this conversation shows you how much I really know about what's going on, like 5 minutes from where I live.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the CashFlowPro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making CashFlowPro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
And some sergeant major or colonel or warrant officer or chief petty officer, who's the face, right? Because they can be on the phone back to wherever, but that's the face of what needs to happen right there, particularly in crisis events. Or you're sitting in sub-Saharan Africa, trying to get them to combat, Islamist extremists. So how do you convince these local forces or these tribes, right, to be on your side? And you're a different religion, you're a different race, and you're not part of their tribe, and you're an American, and it's all kinds of things. How do you influence in that? Or let's take one of these CIA case officers, right? that's going out there and trying to convince somebody to probably betray their company, their country or their organization on our behalf. That's a pretty substantial sales job, right? Like if you can convince somebody to betray their country, you can probably go sell some commercial real estate, right? You just got to get knowledgeable about commercial real estate. But the skills, attributes, and experience around things like influence and gaining trust and things like that, it's applicable everywhere. A lot of the officers have to go work inside the Beltway and get appropriations, right? Like, hey, we want new helicopters or these operations. So you're sitting there dealing with Congress. I can tell you, having been, because a lot of what I do in this role is sales in terms of trying to get folks to donate to our program, things like that. That's really sales. Trying to get people to buy into our program of taking a look at our folks at sales. The toughest sales job I ever had was talking to congressional staffing teams, right? Sometimes they're 22-year-olds and don't know anything, but they got hired because, they're friends of a family or they did an internship. Sometimes they're very senior. They may be very anti-military, but they're going to vote on an appropriations bill that's very important to what we're trying to do. And you got to go in there and influence everything from very seasoned people to 22-year-olds who really don't know much from much, to influence them to say, hey, your boss really needs to vote on this, and it's really important. That's a sales job, and it's very, it's a tough one. So, we help educate our folks that you do have these things. It's just, you got to kind of put them in context of what you're doing. Sure. And then be able to tell the story that resonates with the person you're talking to, the potential business partner. And we do the same thing when we have people approach us that are interested in hiring our folks. Here's kind of what they're going to bring to the table. And the backgrounds, a Navy SEAL is a little bit different from Army Special Forces a service member, just because of their mission slightly different. Same core characteristics, but a little bit different in kind of how they approach things. But we'll help educate on both sides. And a lot of times it's almost like one person speaking Spanish, the other speaking English, and you just need to translate. And you make that translation bridge, and you get somebody who's willing to listen to it in the right environment. And that's where the magic happens. And at that point, we can usually almost walk away because the light bulb goes on, and they're like, wow, if you can do it in this environment, my environment is nothing like this. One of the first meetings I did when I went to work for this bank in the tech space is, I've probably been there 2 weeks, and I went in a meeting, and it was an incredibly contentious meeting. I mean, there was somebody crying. There are people like losing their minds there. And, it's pretty easy to be like, hey, nobody's dying today. No, zero people are dying with anything going on here. Nobody's going to be hurt. This is very important stuff to our business and our clients, but nobody's dying. So let's start with that, and then we can measure, from there. So the ability to wade into complex situations, because they've been stressed. Part of being selected for all these organizations is being able to go into these very stressful, complex environments and succeed. And that's what they bring to the table. People see the SEALs out there in the surf with the logs and the boats and doing all this crazy stuff. Special Forces selection. You're carrying around a Jeep that has one wheel with 8 guys, or, it's, people think it's a physical event. The physical piece to all those exercises is to induce stress on the candidate.
That's right.
And with that stress, then you can assess how they're going to be. Are they going to turn inward and not, be a team player? It's all about them. Are they going to quit? Are they going to break? And what all those things are doing, like the Buds Hell Week and the Special Forces section selection, and what they do with the aviators is, can they function under stress? Because if you can't, then it's pointless. If everything's perfect and you can function perfectly, great. But the one moment there's sand in the gear, if everything blows up, it's not good, right? It's 80% all the time is better than perfect 1% of the time. And that's kind of what they're looking for, is the folks that can get through that stressful environment, continue to be a team player, lead, motivate, and inspire the team, and actually bring problem-solving skills to the table there. And that's where they start. And then everything else after that is just building upon those core capabilities and attributes.
So, at the same time, I always, my go-to for why so many ex-military guys get into, guys and ladies, by the way, get into this space is because of the systematic nature. And I think actually what you're talking about right now could actually be even ahead of the systematic part. I think the systematic part is almost the benefit of getting in the business, because a lot of us, I'm not ex-military, so I don't want to say us as in that regard, but when it's the problem solving, it's the ability to handle stress, it's the ability to say, like you said, it's almost like when my kid comes in to my room or whatever crying, okay, is anybody dead? No. Are you bleeding? No. Is anything broken? No. Do we need to go to the hospital? No. Okay, then chill and let's figure this out. And I think that nature of things is almost, I guess I just look for, anytime I start to see statistical things, and statistical things to me is the military makeup, ex-military makeup of this business. And I always find myself trying to dissect, why do people do things? Why do people do these things? Why do people react to marketing materials? Why do people react to this Facebook post this way or this Instagram post that way? And then when you just really sit down and start trying to put the pencil to paper on some of this stuff, it's and so anyway, I guess I'm getting off on a tangent here. I just want to that's just my thoughts, so but I can't help but have massive respect for the fact that you all are doing what you're doing, especially doing it as a nonprofit, because there's so many people out there right now that need help. And honestly, man, a lot of the help really could be taken care of by somebody simply standing behind them and saying, hey, turn this way, right? And how much help did you just give that person by just simply changing their direction by 1 degree, right? And you get them into something and like, man, I really like this. And the fact that you all do that as a nonprofit is just astounding to me, because there is so many for-profit things like that out there as well, coaching programs and $10,000 this and $20,000 that and books and everything else. But the fact of the matter is when people look behind them and they're like, man, this guy doesn't have to be here. He could be off playing golf. He could be off babysitting his grandkids. He could be off doing, I don't mean you have grandkids. I don't know if you have grandkids. I didn't want to age you there, but what I'm getting at is these people that are operating and working in this nonprofit could be doing something else, but yet they're here standing behind me, and it gives some comfort level to them to say, hey, instead of looking that way, just change your direction 1 degree and look that way. Check this business out. Or how can we help you by getting you connected with this guy? Maybe you like that model. Maybe you don't. Maybe this is the business for you. Maybe it's not. But you don't know unless you try. But you all are automatically bringing to the table, like if you brought 10 people to me, I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be 2 or 3 that really fit the mold and really find what they consider to be their purpose.
Yeah, it's the reason I came back to this organization was, and I never really left. I was always a volunteer. I sat on the board for a little while. But the reason I shifted to doing it full time is because it had a huge impact on my transition. And going back to the point is, I think when folks lose that purpose and team, that's where you start to see the depression, which leads to other things and a lot of the veterans issues. Correct. So I really view having a positive transition as it's going to reduce a significant number, not all of them, right, but a significant number. Everything thinks like the depression is really related to combat, and it's not. And the statistics from the VA really show that. If you look at who's going to them with depression and polls of the population, it's that loss of sense of purpose, that, of something they're doing and not fitting. So we can reduce a great amount of that by making sure service members have a really positive transition.
And don't we see a lot of that same mental thing that you just said, loss of purpose. We see this almost the same identical thing to people that have served, say, 20 years in jail or prison. They come out And all of a sudden they're like, what? You mean I don't have to go do dishes, or I don't have to go do, and it's like, I guess you just see that same almost state when people just lose that sense of, or when all of a sudden that sense of purpose is more or less just pulled out from under them. Right.
Yeah, and it's like serving the bigger thing, or what's going to get you up in the morning. Like, you're not going to sit in the driveway gripping your steering wheel and gritting your teeth because you got to go to work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't use the term work. We use the term, hey, what's your next career, right? What's your next career path? Because work's work, but like, I have to go, this weekend I worked on my lawn because it was exactly that. It's like a must do thing, didn't want to do it, but I did it, right? Had to power wash the driveway, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That was work, right? It's I don't get purposeful. I didn't get up cheery that I had to go do it. But it was something I had to do. And it's why we don't use the term work. We're looking to get people into different career paths so they can go out there and do something where, they've got a purpose, they enjoy what they're doing, and they're contributing back to the organization they join. Because if they're happy and they're contributing back to the organization, that's just great for everybody. It's great for business. It's great for America. And it circles back to, it helps claw away at what's going on with veterans out there, and that sense of purpose piece. The PTSD, folks have it, right? I mean, this generation has served more time in combat than any generation through the longest wars. We've got operators that have a decade, like literally a decade of time in combat, right? It's unprecedented. There's no other veteran community that had that out there. So there it is, that out there, but that's really can be dealt with, and it's not something like folks bring into their daily lives and things like that. So again, having kind of something purposeful, making sure they're connected to the community, really just helps alleviate, in our opinion, a substantial number of those organizations. We certainly see it with our alumni who have gotten out there and found a new track that they can be purposeful about, and they're engaged in their communities, and they're engaged in the veteran community, and they're really just giving back. And it's good. And it's going to claw away at the problem. And for me, what's super exciting is that, but then just watching the impact they're having on these very different, at all levels, very small organizations, very big Fortune 100 organizations, and they're all just having really tremendous impacts there and changing the paradigm and how people view veterans overall in terms of hiring them.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, Tommy, thank you so much. And I always, sometimes when I have folks that are past military on the show, I always like to thank you for your service to start with. I mean, and people that are out there know that we greatly appreciate everything that you all have done, because the fact that you all have gone off, fought for our freedom, and any military personnel listening, active or past, listening to our podcast, we get to do what we want to do because of you, and because of mainly the brothers and sisters that you all have that sacrificed everything so that we can live in a great country. So certainly want to definitely thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing. It's got to be a massive service to the veterans that come out, especially ones that really need that help and direction and finding that sense of purpose. So with that being said, Tommy, we've got a couple of questions we ask every guest that comes on the show. And the first of those questions is, what is the best book that you've recently read or are currently reading?
Tribes. It's really about it's about that lack of connection that a lot of veterans have, when they transition. And it was a new book that was referred to me, a couple of weeks ago. And it's putting words, what I was trying to describe to you about the transition. And it's that you're being disconnected from your tribe there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, all right, awesome. What is a dream vacation that you have taken or hope to take?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've never been to Australia and that area, New Zealand. I definitely love to get down there. I'm probably starting with New Zealand. I'm a pretty passionate fly fisherman, and they've got some of the best world-class fly fishing for big, massive browns.
In New Zealand, they do?
They do. That's
Wow.
right. And
So I grew up in Colorado, and fly fishing was always big for trout. Big.
So I'm from, I was born in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. So kind of grew up on the fly fishing thing. So, so that's it, get out there in the Lord of the Rings, scenery and do fly fishing, which is my passion. And then get down to Australia, which, is a pretty amazing place, in terms of the geography and the continent.
Oh yeah. And in terms of just like how many different places on this planet could you see that array of life and all of God's creations basically in one? I mean, other than just saying like things that you don't see in America. I think they have their kangaroos and their Fostas, Bia, and that stuff is wonderful. So anyway, all right. With that being said, what is the best way for a listener to reach out and get in touch with you? Again, especially if we just so happen this episode trips across, or somebody trips across this episode that's past military, or somebody that needs to reach out to you to talk to you about anything that you all have to offer, what is the best way for that to happen?
Yeah, go to our website. It's www.sotf.org. So sotf.org. And look through what we do. And then there's a button there that, to help get more info, become a hiring partner, mentor, donor. It's all right there. So take a look at what we do and reach out to us.
Awesome. Tommy, thank you so much. And listeners, special thank you to our armed forces. It always gives us a reminder when we have folks like Tommy on the show to say a prayer for all of you all, and let there be more peace in this world we all hope for, but we all know what happens at times. So thank you so much for listening today. And while we're ending the episode, please scroll down and smash that subscribe button. And that way you can be notified when we release new episodes, new content. And also while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate it. And Tommy, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. Listeners, thank you. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day.
CashFlowPro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.